This is what I've been doing for a few years because I just don't have it in me to write another sermon on top of all the sermons I'm writing for the high holidays, just in full transparency. But my girlfriend tells me there's no difference between a text study and my sermons, which is a little bit hurtful, but also I'll take her word for it. So I want to just highlight one little baby line that comes up in this week's Torah portion, which is Parshat Ki Teitzei, and it's easy to miss, and arguably it has been missed by many people throughout the centuries, but I wanted to raise it up. And that is, here at the top, do not hate an Egyptian because you are a stranger in that land. And for those of you who are sort of aware of the Jewish origin story, who may have celebrated Passover before, this might come as a bit of a surprise because Egypt is the place of our oppression, of our slavery, and what we celebrate is having left Egypt. But, it's not so clear that we're not allowed to hate Egyptians until it does become clear in this very verse. And Rashi, in the second source, who's probably the most famous commentator on the Torah, he qualifies it in a way that maybe is expected. He says, when it says don't hate them, it means don't hate them fully. Like, you can hate them a little bit. Just don't hate them fully, right? And then he really, joking aside, gives, pretty strong reasons for why we actually can hate them a little bit, right? For those of us who have forgotten, right, they cast our male children into the river, which, to be clear, is, attempted genocide, right? And there's a source there for that. Every boy who is born must be thrown into the river, is what Pharaoh said. And so for that reason, we are allowed to hate them a little bit, but we're not allowed to hate them fully. And why is that? Rashi ends his comment, because they were your hosts in a time of need. So when we take that verse, and then we think about it in that context, and I know you might be thinking, well, what was that time of need? We'll get there in a second, but it seems to be that despite literally the worst thing that you can imagine, we're not allowed to fully think of someone in that way, that we have to also be holding in mind the way that they hosted us. And when I first read this text, it sounded a little bit like toxic positivity, the sense of oh, well, don't be mad, there's still this good thing. And it's yeah, but I don't know, balanced out, attempted genocide, they hosted us. It's tricky, right? There's a similar idea that comes out in the Talmud, which is probably where Rashi's getting this idea from. He says, Egypt, and this is Rabbi Yossi in the Talmud, which was written about 2,000 years ago, you shall not hate the Egyptian, right? This is the line from this Torah portion. That's telling you how important it is to be a host. Right? Because, and then I've literally never known how to say this in English, a fortiori. I know how to say it in Hebrew, kal v'chomer, but that doesn't do much. Anyway, it's like a logical inference, right? If this smaller thing is true, then certainly this thing, which is sort of even more obvious, should be true, right? Just as the Egyptians who hosted Israel out of their own benefit should be treated kindly, and we're not allowed to hate them, how much more so should you treat kindly people who host Torah scholars? Rabbis, which is an amazing example of the rabbis just promoting their own agenda, which is host us when we come as scholars and residents in your communities. It'll be good for you. It'll mean that people aren't allowed to hate you, right? Because if we're not allowed to hate people who hosted us for selfish reasons, then we surely can't hate people who host us out of the kindness of their heart. But I think besides that kind of funny pro-rabbi agenda that they have here, there's also an acknowledgement that it wasn't even that great what they did. They were kind of in their own self-interest when they hosted us, these Egyptians. And so what I think this all builds to is a real question of why aren't we allowed to hate them? Because sometime back in the day, they hosted us once, and I guess now we're supposed to not hate them as a result of that one time. So Rabbi Tali Adler wrote just this week, and this is in the second to last source. Once, generations earlier, Egypt was a place of safety for Jacob and his family in a time of famine. For those of you who know your Hebrew Bible well, right, that's how the Israelites came down to Egypt in the first place, is that they hosted us during a time of famine. And so despite the subsequent years of persecution, we are commanded to remember that initial hospitality. And then she takes us in another direction. We are reminded that our story in Egypt is one of beauty mixed with pain, gratitude mixed with deep resentment. We are commanded to give room to both, to treat our stories with the integrity and nuance they deserve. You know, I don't know about you, but I've struggled a lot with not having black or white thinking. It's kind of hard in this moment we live in, which is very black and white thinking. And what I think this verse offers us is like, maybe let's be a little less black and white. Maybe let's try to find room for that nuance. And still, it didn't fully hit for me, this idea of letting one-time hospitality sort of cloud out pretty clear wrongs. So I'll end with a verse from Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who wrote this in 2012, who takes this in a very different direction. For him, it's not about hospitality at all. It's not about the fact that Egypt hosted us one time back in the day. He writes, "To be free, you have to let go of hate." That is what Moses is saying. If they continued to hate their erstwhile enemies, Moses would have taken the Israelites out of Egypt, but he would not have taken Egypt out of the Israelites. Those who are held captive by anger against their former persecutors are captive still. And I think this is a powerful message as we build up for the high holidays, which I've mentioned now probably 5 different times. And as we think about who we want to be in the year ahead, we might have every reason to justify our hatred, to point to all the reasons why this is actually how it should be. We should be hateful. And yet what Rabbi Sachs pointed out is that actually it's not even about them. If you yourself want to be free, you're going to have to figure out a way to let go of that hate. Shabbat shalom, everyone.